Welcome, new Earth Anchors. Welcome to your community. I am Dr. Tatiana Irvin, and I am here with my colleague and soul sister, Shelly Whitehouse. Shelly.
Hello. Nice to see you, T.
Nice to see you. And this topic is one that, as we delve deeper into this new Earth Anchoring series, is essentially the foundation that we have to build upon in every aspect of this work. And I think that our community, our audience here will see is foundational for just being human and sentient and conscious, wouldn't you say?
Oh, yeah. And it's our, it's what makes us human in this go round.
Mm-hmm. It is the linchpin. It is what cinches everything together. So today's topic, New Earth Anchors, is false separate self. And I'm going to kind of lead in with non-dogmatic philosophy. Dogmas have been built around it, but it is non-dogmatic philosophy that we have known through the ages. And I'm going to marry it, just like I like to do as an inherent metaphysician, with evolving science, evolving quantum models in science. And so what does false separate self mean? Well, most of us come into this earth life, into these bodies, and our parents tell us, what our name is, and they tell us what their names are as separate from us. And we start to learn, that there are doors and windows and cars and street lights, and some things are friendly and some things aren't. There are other people. We start to lose an inclusiveness that maybe is a primer and a precognition when we're first born, and we develop a sense of false separate self, and then we start seeing compartmentalization in everything. So I want to go back to a non-dogmatic yet very powerful spiritual and philosophical principle, which is this. In all walks of faith, there is a baseline philosophy that there is a divinity, there is a source, there is a prime mover, there is a creator, a universe, and that from that prime mover, that creator, all things were formed. Mm-hmm. That's been taken scripturally to be, hey, the divinity that created all things is omnipresent, omniscient, and omnipotent, all of which comes from everything that has sprung from it is part of it. Therefore, it is all-knowing of what is happening through all of its fractalization. It is all-knowing and all-powerful over its fractalization, and it is always present in its fractalization. And fractals are still connected, even though they seem to spin out, like an unfurling fern.
Tatiana, can I interrupt for just a second?
Yeah.
For those that may not be familiar with the terminology of fractalization, can you give a little short definition?
Well, what I was attempting to express when I talked about a fern unfurling, there is some math and science to this, but Fibonacci sequences, the way that trees continue to come up out of the ground and then lay out their branches, shrubs lay out their branches, the way that things spiral in shells or spiral in flower rotation. It's in nature everywhere that a prime source or creative force spirals out its own creation. And so divinity, being that central prime mover, creates from itself, and it spirals out in such a way that now I am a fractalization, connected and still connected to the whole, as are you, as is every other level of sentient life. But we all come from that one space. So it's like we unfurl, we roll out. And then from there, through our own co-creative expression, we start to co-create our marriages, our children, our business ideas, our big entrepreneurial ideas, and divinity experiences more of itself through us. How did that sound? Did that cinch it for you, Shelly? Do you think that was enough for our audience?
Yeah, I think it's good for people to understand. Well, I was thinking of the analogy of a hologram.
Yeah.
That every aspect of the hologram contains the whole.
Absolutely. Or the ocean, every drop.
Ocean, exactly. Yeah. So a drop of the ocean is a fractal of the entire ocean.
Love it.
So in terms of our existence, we are each fractals of the bigger whole.
Absolutely. And so it's microcosmic, and it's macrocosmic. You know, this tiny particle that makes up part of the atom, that is part of the cell, that is part of the cellular tissue that makes up the organ, and the organ system inside the body is still all part of my body, right? Even though it has its own charter and its own intention on how it co-creates and how it creates, you know, homeostasis and balance in my body. There's the microcosm and the macrocosm. And so that immediately brings us to this place of there is no separateness. There is the illusion of separateness so that we know how to navigate our own energy. But for the sake of human evolution in consciousness, kindness, and the work that we're here to do, which is to anchor peace, if we don't go back to these foundational principles of I was never separate to begin with, that was just an ability to navigate my sense of identity in the world, but I have to return to this everyone outside of me and everything outside of me is still part of an aspect of myself. How would I interact with everyone I encounter and all life that I encounter if I kept a keen memory and an anchored sense of that is me, right? Right, Shelley? You know,
so this is beautiful. I love this conversation. So, and so how do you share, or how does someone learn to recognize themselves, right? So many of us are familiar with the concept, you know, we are one. Yes. We're all the same. We're all human. We all are spiritual brothers and sisters. We all came from the same seed. And to be able to recognize that and not see ourselves as separate from each other, and or to demonize another because they are not quote unquote like us, or to make someone wrong because they don't believe the same things we do. What are some ways that people who maybe have a visceral response to others or other behavior, how can they access or acknowledge that without beating themselves up? You know, how do you like heal that? That's a kind of a big question, I know, but that's you know, so what I'm getting in this conversation is around false separate self, is that if anytime we see someone else as other, as not like us, or as less than, or even greater than ourselves, then we're separating ourselves. We are seeing a false perception.
Right. You know, the question is where we want to go with this conversation, but for the sake of giving it a richer texture, that was foundational philosophy, historical philosophy that we were just talking about, that has been made scriptural, that has been made dogmatic, but still at its foundation was just common wisdom and understanding, wisdom of the ages. Well, we have all of these branches of evolving science, and quantum physicists and astrophysicists have begun to discover some things. And I'm just going to say what Albert Einstein had discovered. We're getting new terms now, but a lot of the public didn't even realize that he called something that could not be explained in a particulate type of science, in looking at quantum fields, splitting a particle in half and having one half of that particle here in, for instance, the United States, and another that had been transported to Helsinki, Finland, with two labs working together. They stimulate the one in Helsinki, and the scientists in the United States are observing that the particle that has been split in the United States is responding identically to the stimulation to the one in Helsinki. And Albert Einstein said, you know, God doesn't throw dice. This is called spooky action at a distance. We can't figure it out. There must be some connection. Isn't that funny? It's so scientific.
I love spooky action.
Spooky action at a distance. Not the most high-minded title that he could have given it, but what the quantum field has said is that what you do to one at a particulate level, at a cellular, atomic level, at a cellular level, at a set of cells like an organ, within the body, within families, within community, and then we just spread out and it becomes the entire globe. It becomes humanity. And for the sake of this discussion, we're going to keep it with humanity. What you do to one, you do to all. It may feel separated through the rungs of distance, just like throwing a pebble in the pond, and we may be desensitized to it. We may be filtered, but what we do to one, we do to all. If that's true, and it's scientifically sound and it's philosophically grounded, then all of the anxiety that we're talking about that's keeping people from being earth anchors now and being able to see a hopeful future that doesn't look cataclysmic and doesn't look biblically destructive like the book of Revelations, or doesn't look like a civil war in this country, they don't realize that they're still seeing it through that separate lens. Mm-hmm. And that more community co-creating the world that we want, because we were never separate to begin with, is always going to be the most powerful objective and the goal. And I know your work with horses and just the automatic and the inherent nature that they have, recognizing the lack of separation in self isn't something that they had dumbed down or turned off like a lot of us did when we were growing up in the Western world or wherever we happened to grow up. So let's go back to some of the basics, Shelley. Share a little bit about how that shows up for you in your work.
Okay, great. That's a great segue. Yeah, I was thinking of, the do unto others philosophy is so basic. It's so simple. It's been true. It was true then. It's true now. That what you do to others, you do to yourself, you do to the body, you do to the whole. And we were talking just a little bit before we got on about, okay, so what's the concept of false self? And the false self is the belief in separation. And if you believe that you are separate, or you believe that you are, and it can be anything, it can be just you believe you're not good enough, or you're not worthy to step into a new realm of being or presenting yourself to the world. Working with horses is so horses don't have they don't have a false self. They don't have a false self. They only have their real self. It's just who they are right there in that moment, and then who they are in the next moment. They're not projecting. They're not trying to be somebody they're not. They'll just be really honest and present. And so they demand the same thing from us. And humans have this, and this is the thing I was saying earlier that makes us human, that I believe makes us human, is the fact that we really have a split mind. We seek our divinity, we crave it, we are constantly striving to be whole and complete and in healthy relationship in our society, in our families, and in our relationships and with ourselves. Yet we have this belief that we are separate, that we are different than other people, that we are, whether it's our heritage or our gender or our socioeconomic standing, and that belief can actually drive us insane.
Oh, yeah.
And there's working with horses is they just want to be with the real you. So when you come to work with a horse, if you have an idea in your head about the way things are supposed to be, yet you feel something else in your heart, or you yearn for something else in your heart, and then your actions are not in line with either of those things, a horse won't want to be with you. You're not congruent. You are not in alignment with your best self.
How do they demonstrate that, Shelley? What are the cues that you would pick up on with the horse feeling that you're out of continuity with yourself? Do they move away? What are the behaviors?
If they're left for their own devices, it will also depend kind of on the personality of the horse you're working with. Some tend to be a little more leadership oriented. And if you are not being the leader, and let's say you're in a confined area with the horse may not be on a lead line, but you're in a confined area where they can't, leave or go so far away, which they might do, or they may try to move you around in a way that they are asking you to step into your body and step into yourself so that you can be present with them.
They're kind of calling you to orientation.
It's a good way to put it. Sure, they may push you around or nip at your clothes, or they want you to become present. They want you to be able to stand and hold your own space. So holding your own space, when you can hold your own space and you're the leader of yourself, then you can be with them. You can even lead them. Then if you can trust yourself, then they can trust you also. And the way that this demonstrates false self-behavior is the minute you start to doubt or you believe that this isn't really happening, it's a fluke, or you default to some behavior of not believing in yourself or whatever's happening. And I don't have any like major specifics right now. But the horse will then either do the same thing it did, or it will leave. It may not just engage with you at all, just leave. If you're not going to be present with me, I'm going to go do something else.
And as you've experienced when I've been out on the farm and we were doing prep for Earth and Equus, I've had one of the horses come running up to greet both of us, and he could sense my freneticness having come out of a telephone call, out of traffic, out of too many things in my head. And that horse told me what was what. I mean, I got bawled out for a couple of seconds. I think it was red. And I looked at you and I went, I totally deserved that. He's like, hey, get it together. I came over here to greet you and your head is all over the place and your energy is spiking.
And he spun around and ran away.
That's exactly right. I'm out of here. So even knowing as much as we know, it's a conscious experience for you every time you step out onto that paddock, isn't it, Shelley? And holding that space for the clients when you're doing this coaching work.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So yeah, and they'll respond different ways, again, according to their horsenality. And you have to stay present. You can get run over, and not because they want to hurt you, but because you're not paying attention.
Yeah.
And so horses demand of each other what they demand of us, what they demand of each other. And it's an opportunity to start to see where your default behavior lies. And your default behavior isn't necessarily wrong behavior. Mm-hmm. It's served you in some capacity. It may serve you again, but it means that it's not a conscious choice. It means that behavior you're not either aware of it, mm-hmm. or you don't realize you have another way of being present in the moment. Right. So most people come from their default behavior, which is their past conditioning. And they rely on their past conditioning to get them through to the next moment, to the next moment, to the next moment. And then what happens is you miss all the present moments. Mm-hmm. And I believe that your past conditioning is literally your false self trying to run the show and to perpetuate itself. That it has as much desire to perpetuate itself as your divine self does.
Well, let's touch on that, because before we got on and welcomed our community, we were talking about the terms that are commonly used in society for that. Is it called the negative ego, or the false ego, the false self? Mm-hmm. Some people would give it a more sinister name. Others would get real Freudian. We know that there is an aspect of ourselves that's looking to survive, that is actually fed by the societal paradigm, by the media, by institutions. The schools told us, we all went to school, and the schools told us, unless you were homeschooled by very conscious and very progressive parents, you're separate from every other child in this class, and here's your separate desk, and here's your separate pen, and here's your separate grade for the test. And then we were told jobs would pick you over someone else, and that competition was always at play, and there wasn't enough jobs for everybody. Someone was going to win, someone was going to lose, someone was going to get a trophy, someone was going to get a second place, right? I mean, society's constantly reaffirming this principle. Shelley?
That's another way the false self is pervasive in our society up until now, as we are coming together in this more co-creative environment, is that competition was for finite resources, as opposed to the collaboration or competition for discovery of ways to support the whole.
Yes.
So competing to discover something in a joint endeavor, let's come up with the best means of green energy. Let's have some competition to see who can design the best green energy system, kind of thing. Well, that's for a higher cause. That's for a mutually higher benefit, as opposed to I'm going to get mine and you're not going to get any.
Right. Or this science is going to be institutionalized and enforced upon society and the public, so that should you, as an innovator and, an open-minded visionary, choose to create a new energy system for you in your home, they don't let you off the grid. We can see some of the corruptible ways with which those that stand to gain by the systems that we talked about last week in the introduction, that they don't feel good anymore is the terms you used.
Right.
And I said, yeah, and they're not working effectively. Maybe they never really did, but they do appear to be falling apart now.
Mm-hmm.
So challenging one to rise up to the best version of themselves with a little bit of healthy competition isn't the same thing as seeing a general universal lack and then telling others that the world is all about commodification and having one way of doing things and everyone else needs to conform. Right, Shelley? Isn't that where we're coming from?
Yeah, exactly. So when I was talking about default behaviors or default ways of doing things, it's not, there was a time it was the best way to do it. It might have been your survival, to hide or not share your emotions because you would have gotten in trouble for it or punished or worse.
Mm-hmm.
And now that may not be true in this moment anymore. So you have a choice to experience this moment differently from your authentic self, from that part of you that wants to expand and express on a more holistic way. And that our systems that got us out of one way of being, and then they got set in, okay, this is the way it is, especially science got really stuck for a while, meaning they thought they figured everything out.
It became very dogmatic, didn't it?
It did.
Religion.
Exactly. It was its own religion. And so it's taken some people to stir the pot and take us in another direction. So it's just, there's all these different examples of how false self shows up. But I think just to kind of wrap up this conversation, one of the things that I use for myself to help identify, let's see, is this true or is this my false self? Well, being with the horses, they always tell me right away. But am I experiencing doubt or fear based on my conditioning from the past? Mm-hmm. So it takes a moment to stop, literally contemplate what's happening right now. Why am I feeling uneasy about going forward? Is it because there's danger ahead, like really literally danger, like I'm going to get hit by a bus? Or is it because I have been conditioned to not express myself in that manner, mm-hmm. or I haven't done it before and I may be judged?
Right.
And that's generally what it is. And so if I may be judged, well, who's judging me? And I don't know who said it, but what's the quote? What other people think of me is none of my business.
It's a great quote. I think a lot of people probably simultaneously got that download, Shelley. But yeah, it's powerful. Yeah. And that is true. And this is where truth can feel immutable/mutable. Truth is the next level of our learning. If we just want to see it really cleanly without judgment about who's right and wrong, truth is the next level of our learning. What is true for one person based on their current level of understanding and their perception, to filter that, may be different from our truth, and both are equally true if perceived cleanly. Yes. And respectfully.
That's it right there, is being perceived cleanly and respectfully. Yep.
Right. And so we don't have to make someone else wrong. What we are coming back to as implementing this false separate self as it pertains to harnessing peace in New Earth Anchor training and working with Shelley and I in the future and continuing to be in this community engaged in the conversation is to recognize that if we don't first realize that even though we have been born knowing we were part of a collective, part of a whole, part of a united, beautiful, intricate divinity, for the sake of experiencing selfness, which was part of the reason why we came to this planet to begin with, we had to move away from that wholeness. We had to move away from our parents and learn our own perception of things, or away from the church of our understanding, or away from our professor's point of view, to start to garnish our own sense of independent self. But for the healing of humanity and for the ability to return to peace and the next level of human evolution, just like all grand cycles, one of the topics we're going to be covering, we need to be returning to that united front and to that oneness and that universal sense of connectedness at a divine level. Shelley, does that feel cohesive to you the way that just kind of flowed out of me?
Very much.
Okay.
Very much. I mean, I literally see that regardless of what your religion is, most religions have some belief in a reconnection with source. We'll just use that blanket terminology, that we will reunite. And I believe that that is where we are going consciously. That it's not what happens at death if you've lived the perfect life. It's where we're going consciously, and that if you believe, in hell is actually the separation. Hell is the experience of the false self, which is another conversation.
It is, and a massive one. But I love that you went there, because we have people here that have their religious views, and we respect all the religious views. What we're looking for is the golden mean, that golden thread that connects everywhere that we are, because we do know that co-creation, what's leading a lot of these people to look at this series is they're looking around at the world and they're going, it's nuts. It's nuts out there. Politically, it's nuts. Socioeconomically, it's nuts. Looking at the financial paradigm, it's nuts. Talking about wars and rumors of wars looks nuts. And it looks like they're moving us towards transhumanism. They, us, they're moving this mentality of, for all of us to be united again, we need to be connected to some sort of an AI, sort of a one singularity intelligence grid. And what you and I are arguing, and what the basic foundational universal truths have been saying, is we already are.
Right. Well, and so I know we could really go down this rabbit hole, but the fact that we're seeking that is that there's the false self. There's the belief we don't already have it.
That's right.
It's
and
that
we're being told that we don't have it. Hence the need for conversations like ours and many others that are happening globally.
Right. Right.
That are saying, all right, you've spiraled out, you've fractalized out into this separate person. It's time to furl and curl and roll back into the awareness of where your connection to your origins came from. And so, for the sake of this community, Shelley and I, through the work that we do together, what we offer our clients and our retreaters and our workshop attendees is a reminder to be building more microcosmic community. We co-create together based on our thoughts, our feelings, and on our community incentives, or that baseline credo that we're all hinged on, which is, I'm not interested in creating a biblical, devastating, cataclysmic future. I'm not interested in World War III and Iran and nuclear wars. Last I checked, Shelley isn't either. How do we encourage you, our community, in an ongoing way, engagement, communication, and then in a powerful co-creative vision as a community for a future that we can be co-creating together as our own fractalization?
Awesome. I think that's the perfect place to end. Will you want to share what we're going to be talking about in our next edition?
We are. So any of those of you that have comments, questions, want to stretch that conversation, go to our YouTube channel, go to Waking Up Solutionary TV, and become a subscriber, hit the bell so you get the notifications. We want to see your feedback, because we're going to listen to your feedback, and we're going to be including that in every subsequent topic. And next week's topic is a build off of this. It is empathy and boundaries. Once we recognize that there is false separate self, that we are all connected, how do we protect ourselves? How do we have empathy for those around us? But how do we also build boundaries for a lot of unconscious people that aren't managing their energy really well? So we're excited to go into that next topic. Take a look at my website, wakingupsolutionarytv.com, drtatianaurban.com, and get on a subscription so that you also get mail notifications through the occasional reminders that you're going to get via email. You're not going to get bombarded. And Shelley, tell your folks what websites to go to, and also your Facebook to connect with you.
Sure. So I'm Facebook, Shelley Whitehouse, and Shelley's Schelli, Shelley Whitehouse. Same as my website, it's shelleywhitehouse.com. Again, if you want to follow me or contact me, that's great. We want to just keep this really, there's no selling in this process. It's very, like Tatiana said, co-creative. We do offer workshops and opportunities to experience yourself as an earth anchor with horses and in nature. But it's just an opportunity for us to really broaden this conversation and bring it to more people.
Absolutely. Yeah. Unquestionably, there's the motivation. When you offer something complimentary for free, there is always going to be the incentive that you recognize there are those that are only going to take what is free. And with that, there needs to be some noble motivation. So our noble motivations is we want to create and co-create with you the most ideal future for you, for me, for each other, because we are all one. And if we do come together and we offer this platform, maybe you'll join in the conversation and be part of that co-creative community towards peace.
Yeah.
Next week, empathy and boundaries. Shelley Whitehouse and I are so excited to have you be part of the conversation. Don't be shy. Jump in. Yeah. It is going to continue to be something that we benefit by as well, by you being involved. And until we meet you next time, remember, you are a new earth anchor. It's just a decision. It's just a choice. Be part of our co-creative future. Be part of anchoring the peace. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.